Shalom, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This Bet Midrash in live, where we teach the Torah in Yeshua from Israel. And we're going to talk about a hot topic that has been going on. And we are in the middle of this war. And we're going to talk about Ishmael and the end of Ishmael. So this teaching is an excerpt from our book, the Ishmael, the Weapon of Chastisement of the End Time, that I highly recommend you to get, because it's only excerpts I'm going to share, and there is a lot of stuff in it and a lot of prophecies and so. So we are at the end of the 6,000 years before the millennium. Everybody knows that in Jewish dates, we are just at the end of the 6,000 years, plus minus. And prophecies start to unfold, and we see clearer and clearer what's going on. So it's also the way what's going on and what's happening with the rise of Islam, and Ishmael is linked to Islam, of course. It is also the way that Hashem is bringing back his people together, but he has to go through a lot of turmoils and sufferings. We saw in our generation the rise of this evil religion, or at least the way it has been used. And we might see also its fall and its coming back to the God of Israel, Bezrat Hashem. So why the church should be strong after all those centuries of practice, we witness the rise of this conquering people and religion, entering with power, with permits that there are governments in the civilized Christian country, and Christian country, yes, allow them to subjugate men and to submit men and women to an iron yoke. We see, for instance, in Europe, Belgium, England, Germany, France, everything is falling under Islam, under the Muslim brothers. So what are the reasons for this spiritual war? And why does God allow Islam to conquer the Western world? What are the secret agreements concluded by our governments to give access to mass immigration for Muslims in Europe, in the United States, Canada, all Western countries? So all these, all the information are in this book. I'm just going to touch some part of it. And what I'm going to share is based on the Word of God and the sacred Jewish sources. So let's start with the Chafetz Chaim. He said in Bereshit, he's quoting about Bereshit 16, and he says, the Torah describes Ishmael as a wild donkey of a man. The Torah is eternal, everlasting. If the Torah describes this way the family of Ishmael, then they are forever considered a wild donkey of a man. Even if every nation in the world combined their efforts to educate and civilize them, they would not succeed. There is wildness within them. So I'm still quoting the Chafetz Chaim. And you will never be able to remove it. Then the Chafetz Chaim sighed and said, Oi, who knows what kind of savagery this animal will inflict upon the Jews in the final days before Mashiach arrives. And we could also add now, not only the Jews, but also to the nations, the Christians, the Syria, Europe's slaughters and everything. So starting with this text, let's dive into the Torah. First of all, we are going to see that Ishmael was rejected along with Hagar. Ishmael has just been conceived, and Hagar, the Egyptian woman, despised her mistress, and Sarah mistreated her. So Nachmanides, Ramban, interprets this way. He says, our mother Sarai was guilty to have acted that way, and Abraham to have tolerated it. This is why God saw the misery of Hagar and gave her a son who became the ancestor of a wild race who would treat Abraham and Sarai's descendants harshly. So this is one way to see it, but it's not only because of Sarah's reaction. Let's see the character of Ishmael. In Genesis 21, we saw that Ishmael, we call it Ishmael's Lothar. Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian. She calls her the Egyptian in that case because she says she's not Abraham's wife, but she's acting like an Egyptian, whom she had borne to Avram, scoffing, metzachek. Therefore she said to Avram, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Yitzchak, which means to love. And the matter was very displeasing in Avram's sight because of his son, because he loved Ishmael. So the term laughter can be used several ways in the word in line with the context. Laughing in truth, like Sarah when she heard that she was going to have a baby in Genesis 18. Therefore Sarah laughed, vatitzchak, which is the same root, metzachek, titzchak, within herself, saying, have I grown old, and so. But also it concerned illicit unions, Genesis 39:17. Then she spoke to him with words like this, saying, the Hebrew servant, talking about the bad experience that Joseph had with Potiphar's wife. The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to mock me, letzachek. So it happened and I lifted my voice, and so. In idolatry, Exodus 32. Then they rose early on the next day, offering burnt offering and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play, letzachek, which was apparently sexual activity along with idolatry. About murder, we read in 2 Samuel 2. Then Abner said to Joab, let the young men now arise and compete, vayischaku, before us. And then he thrust his sword to his opponent's side, so they fell down together. So by using this word, the root of it, in the case of Ishmael, the scriptures implies that he would have become jealous towards his younger brother, half-brother, who had taken away his right to inherit, which can be understandable. But then he would have attacked him physically, sexually, or spiritually. We don't know exactly. The numerical value of the word love, metzachek, is worth that of the term to kill, la'arog. So the Midrash tells that Ishmael would have attempted to kill Yitzchak by shooting an arrow at him. Tradition explained that Ishmael made fun of Yitzchak, insinuating also that he wasn't the son of Abraham, but of Avimelech, who had captured Sarah. And because of this lie, Ishmael continues to claim the land of Israel, as if Yitzchak is the son of a Philistine. He has no right to the land, which belongs to the descendants of Abraham only. So, interestingly, their own sources, the Quran, doesn't say so. The Quran says that Allah gave the land of Israel to the Jews, and he restored them to it at the end of the days. It says in the Quran, and I'm quoting, talking about Pharaoh was sought to scare the Israelites out of the land of Israel, but we, Allah, drawn him, Pharaoh, together with all who were with him. Then we, Allah, say to the Israelites, dwell in this land, the land of Israel. When the promise of the hereafter, the end of days, comes to be fulfilled, we, Allah, shall assemble you, the Israelites, all together in the land of Israel. We, Allah, have revealed the Quran with the truth, and with the truth it has come down. We have sent you, Muhammad, forth only to proclaim good news and to give warning. This is in Night Journey, chapter 17. And there is a Muslim professor, Shaykh Palazi, comments, God wanted to give Abraham a double blessing through Ishmael and through Isaac. And he ordered that Ishmael's descendants should live in the desert of Arabia and Isaac's in Canaan, in the land of Israel. So the Quran recognizes the land of Israel as the heritage of the Jews. And he explains that before the Last Judgment, because they believe in the Last Judgment, Jews will return to dwell there. And Baruch Hashem, this prophecy has already been fulfilled since 1948. So Sarah, whose prophetic spirit is sharp, she discerns the bad intentions of the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, and she pronounces God's sentence. Ishmael must be cast away so as not to risk everything or soiling the messianic ideal carried by the promised son, Yitzchak. So it's not about personal resentment or injustice, but about Sarah who prophetically sees Islam behind Ishmael. And Genesis 21, God said to Abraham, do not be displeased in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Yitzchak your seed shall be called. So Ishmael is compared to a wild donkey, Pere Adam. First of all, there is the adjective. He will be like a wild donkey of a man with his hands against everyone and everyone's hand against him, living his life at odds with all his kinsmen. Sforno, a biblical commentator, indicates that he inherited of a double heritage, a wild nature, Pere from his Egyptian mother, descendant of Ham, and a human nature longing for an ideal, Adam. Adam is the highest form to qualify a man, but first is Pere. His indomitable nature is preponderant in his character, as emphasized by the adjective Pere that is placed before the name Adam. And the word Pere means free of control, wild donkey. So Ishmael will dwell in the desert and in tents, rejecting the Western world until today. Even today, the Islamic world and Iran sees America, symbol of the Western world, as the great Satan. This is nothing new. Although you have different people come from Ishmael, Persia, or whatever, but the common denominator is Islam, because our sages say that the world has been divided in 17 nations. 35 are under the side of Edom, which is Christian words, and 35 under the dominion of Islam, which is all the Arab countries. And the 71st nation is Israel, that is different. So Ishmael did not only want to eliminate Yitzchak, but he wanted to take everything, because we have a hint in the word kol, all, kol. Genesis 25, and Abraham gave kol. He had to Yitzchak, all, kol. And in Genesis 17, referring to Ishmael, he shall be a wild man, his hand shall be against every man, yado bakol, and every man's hands against him. So he wanted everything. He's cast away. He didn't inherit from Abraham, in contrast to Yitzchak and his brothers later on. Nevertheless, he received gifts from his father Abraham, who loved him, and there is even a midrash saying that Abraham was coming each year to see his son. He's blessed because God never yields or goes back on his word, and Abraham's intercession bore fruit. And in Genesis 16, it says, then the angel of the Lord said to Agar, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And he said, he gave them 12 princes. So this was the princes of Yishmael. But, yes, I will also make a nation of the son of bondwoman, because he's your seed, he's Abraham's seed. But he will not inherit spiritually with Yitzchak, who is the keeper of the purity of the doctrine, the Torah, and Messiah. Because to Yitzchak belongs the source of life, Yeshua. Romans 9, there are Israelites to whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the Torah, the service of God, the promises, and whom have the Father, and from whom, according to the flesh, Messiah came, who is over all, a kol, the eternally blessed God. But Ishmael has a right to the promised land. He is blessed. He is a son of Abraham. He became powerful, but his lust knows no limit, because the word Islam means submission. This led him to this religion, to create this religion. He's the spiritual father of it. He wants to take hold of Yitzchak heritage. So he still claims a right to the land of Israel. So has he got such a right? And if yes, what is it? I've heard recently, or read on some commentary of Facebook, you know, with this war going on and with all the medias and everything, you have to make a lot of cleaning on the Facebook, because the hatred and coming not only for the people who don't believe, but for the Christian words, just unbelievable. So I'm just removing a lot of friends. So I've heard recently that Christians say that the prophecy and the commandment to bless Abraham also is for Ishmael, which is true in a sense because the son of Abraham. But not only Yitzhak is the owner of the land of Israel, and even some say that Iran has the right to defend itself because we are the bad ones. And the same pretend that we have colonized Israel and we will colonize also Iran. This is the most absurd commentary I ever read. So anyway, let's see if Ishmael has any right on the promised land. So one more time, this is taken from the book Ishmael, the weapon of chastisement for the end times. And the following explanation, so it's about calculation. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm just going to quote it because it's calculation. It can be bothering, you know. So, but it's based on the commentary of Jewish sources, notably for Nachmanides, Ramban, and the Ramban. So in Maseret Sanhedrin, the Talmud explains that the 7-day cycle of creation represents a pattern for the unwinding of events in the history of mankind. So if we refer to the Psalms, 1,000 years represent 1 day. Psalm 90, for 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passed and like a watch in the night. So the 6 days of creation represent 6,000 years of history since creation until today. And Shabbat correspond to the millennium, the Olam Haba, the world to come. The commentators, including the Rambam and the Gaon de Vilna, continues with this reasoning. Nothing is new under the sun. God already created all the events of history during the 6 days of creation. So thus, on the first day, Genesis 1, then God said, let there be light, and there was light. The first 1,000 years of light correspond to the first man who was destined to be the light of the world, a creature designed to rule the earth, Adam. He was the jewel of the creation. So the first 1,000 years correspond to man as a light of the world. The second day, then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and it divide the water from the water. The second millennium, the creator of the universe separated the waters from above from the waters from below. The main idea is there is a split. It corresponds to the flood and the setting apart of Noah and his family. It was in 1556 during the second millennium. So the second 1,000 years correspond to the flood and separation. The third day, then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seeds, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seeds in itself on the earth, and it was so. In 1948, so biblical calendar, Avram was born a few years before the beginning of the third millennium. The Midrash says that from his youth, he asked the good question, is there a creator? Who is the creator? And so. At the age of 50, the Almighty spoke to Avram and reveals himself to him. He called Avram to fulfill a mission, to proclaim the name of God on the promised land. And it is the beginning of the third millennium, corresponding to the third day of creation, which receive vegetation and germination. The seed of Avram also bears fruit with Yitzhak, Yaakov, the birth of the 12 tribes. So the seed starts to fill the world. 500 years after the birth of Avram in 2448, the Torah is given. The third millennium is the era of new things and germination. The fourth day, then God said that there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, for days and years. That God created the lights on the fourth day. The light existed from the beginning because of the first day, but it wasn't the light of the sun or the moon. It was the infinite light, Ein Sof. So this initial light reserved for the righteous will reappear in the messianic times. Yeshua, the light of the world. So what does this work of the creation correspond in the chronology of mankind? At the beginning of the fourth millennium, David prepares for his son Shlomo the construction of the first temple that would light the world like the sun. It lasted 410 years until it was destroyed. Jerusalem remained 70 years without a temple. Then the second temple was built, and the Jewish tradition links it to the moon, which was a mere reflection of the sun, not equal in splendor. This second temple lasted 420 years before it was destroyed. So 410 and 70 and 420, 900, which is 1 millennium in total. So the fourth millennium corresponds to the period of the two temples and descending into exile. Fifth day, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmaments of heavens. Fish and birds represent the multitude, but they also represent fleeing. At any sound of movement, fish are fleeing, birds are scattered. This is what happened to the Jews, who were cast away from country to country, starting with the Israelites, with Ephraim, suffering regular persecutions. The fifth millennium was marked by these persecutions and continual fleeing from place to another place through Europe. So the fifth millennium represents the restless wandering of Israel in the nations. Then the sixth day, that let God say, let the bird bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to its kind. Then God say, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. On the last day, God created land animals, from the primitive to the most evoluted. The sage explained that the animals were not at all created at the same time, but each hour of the 6 days of creation correspond to a type of creature. Man would have been created last at the 5th hour. So what does man represent, since we have accepted the idea that each creative action of the 6th day correspond to a phase of mankind? The Ramban explained that the 6th millennium seems to be different from the others. The events reveal a growing tension between men this time. Mammals and other animals show more aggressiveness than fish and birds in the 5th millennium. This change in animal nature reflects the time of domination and aggression between men. So he suggests the following calculation. 1 day is 1,000 years. 24 hours is 1,000 years. 1 hour is 1,000 divided by 24, which is 41.6 years. Each hour of creation corresponds to 41.6 years. The work of creation only takes place during the 12 hours of day. The sun, for instance, could have been created only during the day. In the biblical account, a new day starts at night. So Judaism continues until today to start day starting at night. So Ramban continues and he says, at the beginning of the day, a kingdom more aggressive than ever will rise. If we add 500 years for the 12 hours of night, so which is 1,000 divided by 2, it's 500, we find the year 5,500 of the biblical calendar, which is the middle of the 18th century. At that time, a wind of revolution arose, when governments and armies were more and more powerful and aggressive, like, for instance, Napoleon's or more. It is the beginning of the modern world, and technologies will develop quickly. So to go back to the first Adam, created on the 6th day at the 5th hours, we must add to the 5,500 years, 5 multiplied by 41.6, 208 years. By adding 208 years to 5,500, we obtain the number 5,708. And traditions associates Adam to Israel. Adam sinned by transgressing the commandment of God, and the Torah was given to Israel to redeem Adam's sin. Later on, Yeshua came in the flesh to manifest the commandments of God and give man the possibility to stop sinning. So the year 5,708 is part of the 20th century, a period marked by great wars, a time of domination and aggression as predicted by the Ramban. World War II saw the spirit of Amalek reincarnated in Hitler, who almost managed to annihilate all the Jews. But in the Christian calendar, the year 5708 corresponds to 1948, which is exactly the date when Israel was born again as a state. And it is also Abraham's birth date in the biblical calendar, 1948. So in 1948, Abraham's time, he arrived in the world with the mission to announce monotheism to a deeply pagan world. In 1948, our time, after almost 2,000 years of wandering, the Jews returned to the land of their ancestors. So what is the link between the entrance to the Promised Land and Abraham? We have to go to Genesis 17 with the covenants. Also, I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession. It will be, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generation. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. The covenant made with Abraham is about circumcision. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it will be a sign of the covenant between me and you. The link is the covenant of circumcision that gave Abraham and his descendants the right to settle in the Promised Land. Without circumcision, there is no Promised Land. Joshua, before the conquest of Canaan, renewed the covenant of Abraham. So since then, all the Jews have kept the covenant of circumcision despite centuries of persecution. And in 1948, they could re-enter their land because they preserved and they kept their right to the land. But now there's a problem because Abraham has another son, Ishmael, is also circumcised. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Commentators of the first centuries, 400 years before Islam was born, tell this midrash. Ishmael went before the Almighty and said to him, what do I have less than Yitzchak? I'm son of Abraham and I'm circumcised. I'm his firstborn, and to me belongs the land of Canaan. God would have replied, you were circumcised at 13, and you don't keep the Brit, you don't keep the covenant according to the Torah I gave Moshe. Maybe, but I'm still circumcised. It is still circumcision. God says, since your circumcision is conditional, because they don't do the whole circumcision like the Jews do. There are different steps. They do only one. Because your circumcision is conditional, I grant you a conditional right on Canaan. 100 years for each year preceding your circumcision. That is 13 multiplied by 100, 1,300 years of occupation of Canaan. Moreover, if we come back to our verse where Ishmael is called Pere Adam, wild donkey of a man, the Zohar in Parashat La'alecha say that being that Ishmael is the son of Abraham and he was circumcised, he implying not a full man because he was not circumcised. He was circumcised without priya, which is another integral part of the Brit Milah, removing the skin and so. So in 638 of our era, 6 years after the death of Muhammad, founder of Islam, Jerusalem was besieged and conquered by the Muslims. In 10 years, all the Byzantine strongholds of Syria, Palestine fell at the hands of Islam. By summing up the year 638 with the 10 years of Muslim conquest, plus the 100 and 300 years of Ishmael's right to the Promised Land, we obtain this date. 638 plus 10 plus 1,300, 1948, 1948, our era. Ishmael could and was allowed to take the land given to Abraham and his descendants and Yitzchak's descendants until 1948, where the prophecies of Isaiah 66 was fulfilled. The nation of Israel was born in one day, May 14, 1948. Hey Beyar Tashach, which is the Hebrew date. Coincidence, chance, are the sages' calculation exact? We know that coincidence, chance, is the work of God working incognito, as quoting Einstein. Everything was planned since the creation. For 130 and 300 years, no power could remove the Muslim presence from Israel, nor the Crusaders, nor Napoleon, nor the British. But in 1948, the occupation right ended. Ishmael no longer has rights to Israel. As his Quran says, at the end time, there won't be, the Jews will come back to their own land. And this time has ended. The messianic times are ready, and Israel will be soon redeemed by Messiah. But they didn't accept because they wanted everything. Remember, you want a call. But if there are some rights with the Almighty, there are also some duties. Adam in Gan Eden had rights, but because he didn't respect his duties, he was cast out of Gan Eden. Israel fights against Ishmael today and suffers many blows, but since not all their duties are always fulfilled, as we know. So these prophetic words of the Chafetz Chaim, which are unfolding before our eyes today, have their roots in ancient sources, even before Islam was born. Chazal, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, and so on. This source described at the end of the Galut, the exile, Edom, which is the last exile. There are 4 exile, but there is one compressed into the 4th, and there will be a new era will begin that will be called the Galut Ishmael, which we are in. I remember when we did the teaching on the Erev Rav, we saw that during the Galut of Edom, it will comprise the Galut of Ishmael and of the Erev Rav, which are manigans in all the work that is going on today. So there is a new phase of exile. In Daniel, chapter 7, Daniel has a dream where he sees 4 animals. The angel explained that these animals represent the 4 different kingdoms that will rule during each of the 4 main exiles. The animal that represents the 4th exile, the Galut of Edom, was strange. It had 10 different horns on his head, and then there's a smaller horn starts to emerge. And the Malbim explained that that smaller horn represents the state of Galut Ishmael just before Mashiach will arrive. This is a very difficult exile. The Zohar teaches that this time of Galut Ishmael is more challenging than any other Galut that occurred through history. Rabbeinu Bechai quotes Deuteronomy 13:7, and the Lord your God will set all those curses on your enemies and on your adversaries who persecuted you. He notes that the word your enemy, oivecha, is used to describe Ishmael, while Esav is described as the son Echa, your despised. An enemy is far worse than someone that you despise, because unlike someone who is despised, an enemy will never show mercy. It's got wildness in it, which is Ishmael. But nevertheless, the Torah, also what we are experimenting since October 7 and so, the Torah also prophesies that Ishmael will ultimately fall and Messiah will arise. In Genesis 25:18, it says, and they dwelt from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite to Egypt, and one goes toward Assyria. He settled, Ishmael. Literally, it says he fell, nafal, before the face of his brethren. And immediately after, the next verse is, this is a genealogy of Yitzchak, Abraham's son. So the Balaturim taught that this explained the proximity of the verse at the end of the Parashat Yisara to the beginning of this one. This verse discusses Yishmael and says that before all his brothers he fell. The first verse in our verse says, and this is the generation of Yitzchak. When Islam will fall, then the generation of Yitzchak, which announces the messianic era and millennium and Messiah, this just that position, indicates that at the end of time, when Ishmael will fall, Messiah ben David, whose lineage goes up to Yitzchak, will reign. And it is also taught in Shabbos, that during the birth pangs of Mashiach, Hashem will go to each of the fathers and say, your children have sinned. And only Yitzchak will pour out his pleas through tefillah and he will pray for the final redemption on behalf of the Jewish people, the Israelite people. Yitzchak is the image of the son who intercedes for his people. And we read in Isaiah 53, therefore I will assign him a share with the great. He will divide the spoil with the mighty for having exposed himself to death and being counted among the sinners, while actually bearing the sin of many and interceding for the offenders. So therefore, Mashiach is alluded to when we discuss the offspring of Yitzchak. And the following is a quote which was written 400 years ago from the writing of Chaim Vital. And it's that Atov. And he say, you already know that the exiles from Egypt until Mashiach are four: Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and Rome, as represented by the 4 cups of wine on Pesach, the 4 beasts in Daniel 7, and many other places. The 4th, which is Rome, stretch out from the Second Temple destruction and is continuing. There was like a kind of break with the Holocaust, but is now the 5th exile with Ishmael is rising. However, the Jewish people are destined further in the end of days to be in the exile of Ishmael, as mentioned in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. But the other 4 exiles are compared to beasts, as mentioned in the book of Daniel. So King David prophesies with the Ruach HaKodesh in the Psalm 124. And all that the future holds for the Jewish people to be in those exiles. So a song of ascent, David, if it had not been the Lord who was for us, let Israel not now say. If it had not been for the Lord who was with us when a man, Adam, rose up over us, then they had swallowed us up alive, and their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord who has not given us as a prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the folders. The snare is broken and we are escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Behold, why in the 4th exile they will say, quoting verse 1, if it had not been for the Lord who was for us, Israel will say, which means now in these 4 exiles we would have been destroyed completely, as it says in verse 3, they had swallowed us up alive. And it expounds the verse as if it says, Israel will say, if it had not been for the Lord, which means that now during those 4 exiles, but there is an additional 5th and final exile for all of them, and which is harder. And this is the exile of Ishmael, who is called Pere Adam, and is not compared to a beast like the 4 others. Then Israel will call out in a different manner, which is verse 2, if it had not been for the Lord who was for us, when a man, Adam, Pere Adam, rose up over us. The man refers to Ishmael, who is the Pere Adam. Because being that he is a man due to the being the son of Abraham, and there he has the merit of his forefather, because God told Abraham, would that Ishmael live before you. And also he has the merit of a circumcision. Nevertheless, he is called Adam, but he is also called Pere. And this is why this exile is harder than the other 4 kingdoms, as our sages have said. Because for this is called Ishmael, that in the future Israel will scream out tremendous screams in the days of his exile, and then Ishmael, God will hear and he will answer them. Ishmael is a weapon that God chose for the end times to bring his people back. It is the only one of the 70 root nations who received the name of God, El, Ishmael. This is why Bilam, when he made his prophecy in Numbers 24, he says, alas, who shall live when God does this? Misumo El, which is the same letter as Ishmael. Who, alas, who shall survive the one in whom El is, Ishmael? And the angel of Hashem said to her, you will conceive and bear a son, and you will call him Ishmael. He was called Ishmael since Kadosh Baruch Hu is destined to hear his nation's cries over the sufferings of the sons of Ishmael and what they would inflict upon them at the end of time. So Hashem will hear the cries of Israel, and he will avenge us of the injustice that Ishmael perpetrates in this final era. He did not place his name Ishmael just so that he is their patron or benefactor. No, just he placed his name upon them for the benefit of Israel, to show that he will answer our prayers, lift us up from the pit of oppression, and punish all those who oppressed us. This is where the Father wants to bring his people to Torah. He wants to bring them to Torah. But before talking about this, let's continue to search a little bit. And when Ishmael and Yitzchak will make peace by sending Messiah. And the angel of God said to her, "Behold, you are pregnant, and he will give you birth to a son. You shall call his name Ishmael." The Baal HaTurim tells us that this word, "you shall call his name," Vekarata, appears 4 times in the Tanakh. In Genesis 16:11, and the angel of the Lord said, you will call his name Ishmael. Deuteronomy 31:29, "For I know that after my death you will surely become corrupt and turn away from the way I've commanded you, and evil will befall you," Vekarata in Hebrew, same, and provoke him to anger. Isaiah 7:14, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel," Vekarata. Isaiah 60, "No more shall you hear of violence in your land, or destruction within your borders, but you shall call Vekarata, your walls salvation, Yeshua, and your gates praise." So the interpretation of these verses means that by calling on Ishmael, or by wanting to make peace with him by human means, evil will fall upon Israel because he's a wild Adam. But on the contrary, by calling on Immanuel, then salvation will come to Israel. So, to end, in the Zohar, there is a talk that repeats itself in many places about to Messiah, which means that the Messianic age will be divided in 2 stages. The first stage is called Messiah ben Yosef. Why the son of Yosef? Because he was the son of Rachel. Rachel represents our word here. She represents the visible, the logical reality. That is why, for instance, he is buried on the way that can be seen by everybody. And Joseph, his success was being seen by everyone. So he became the leader of Egypt. And obviously, God made him successful. That was visible and clear. But he's also called, Messiah ben Yosef is also called Messiah ben Ephraim. Ephraim was also Joseph's son. And Ephraim comes from the word, as the Zohar says, Efer, which is ashes, which is something dry. So after when there is fire, we just are left with ashes. And the ashes are very dry because we cannot grow anything from this. So it means that the first stage in the redemption will be the stage where there's going to be a technological, everything, modernism, everything that we can see in our world. But it's not going to be spiritual yet. The nation of Israel will come back, and then we will plant again, we will settle the mountains, the prophecies will happen on the physical stand. Also the Torah is going to flourish and so and so, but yet it's not yet totally fruitful. And when everybody is, we are seeing what's going on in Israel, we see that Israel is a high developed technological state on the physical plane. Everybody can see also that there is a part that is not spiritual. Okay, it's like Israel did not become in the last 80 years like the model that is meant to be the light to the nation completely, which is also, generating a lot of criticism from many Christians, say that you pretend that you are from the Torah and from God, and you are not. So what I was also answering on Facebook, also commentaries, well, you pretend that you are from the Messiah, and we see that there are many things that are not from him. So everybody is in march going to, and this is planned by God. And then after says that when Israel will settle in the land and we start to rebuild, and starting by the physical technology and everything, and Torah growing, then who will rise in the region? The king of Persia. Persia is the previousness of Iran. And as Persia rises, they will take over many kingdoms. You know, we just had two missiles from Yemen that are under the yoke of Iran today again, despite the ceasefire. So Iran is just ruling. And then they say that they will control the Holy Land for 12 months. So, and that not only they will control the Holy Land for 12 months, including, they will kill many, including Mashiach ben Yosef. So there is a lot of things behind this prophecy. Some say that he will not be killed, some say he will kill, whatever. Mashiach ben Yosef represents the movement that is gathering all the Jews coming back to Israel for the moment. This is the anointing of Messiah ben Yosef. And then the king of Persia will fall and holy divine people will take over the government. What happened a year and a half again, 7th of October? They invaded, they slaughtered, they killed many, and they were planning to do much more, you know, with the Hamas and so, and financed by all the enemies of Israel and Iran and so, and they couldn't. So something changed the decree. So it says that they're going to rule for 12 months. The Zohar tells us that on Rosh Hashanah, every human being his life is the day of his birth and the day of his death is written on that day. We know everything about Rosh Hashanah. This is the first seal. There's another stage, which is on Yom Kippur. Then it's sealed. Then after there is another seal, is on Rosh Hashanah Rabbah. Rosh Hashanah Abba, slicha, which is the last day of Sukkot. So however, all those decrees of the life of humanity is being released for 12 months on Simchat Torah, which fell on 7th of October. It was Simchat Torah. So it means that all the lives and all what was decided for the 12 months was concentrated on that day. It was that day. They could get that day, that equivalent to 12 months, as in the prophecy. So, and then after he said that Persia would fall. What have we been witnessing since October 7th? Slowly, slowly, what we have, everything is just starting to fall. Hamas is starting to fall. Lebanon, Hezbollah, Syria, Iran now. Even that, and that was a superpower that everybody was fearing. It was even written in the news that we overestimated our enemies. They fell like this. We were fearing Hezbollah, they fell. We were fearing Iran, they fell. Just as it's written in the prophecies. So nobody is afraid of Iran anymore for the moment, not even his own subject. So we are in the gates of the promised land. We need this faith. We need that Messiah is coming because everything is just being unfolded one after one, as the prophecy is saying. And the rising sun, the rising lion operation is just showing us that the Lion of Judah is just rising. And to just end, to make a link with the parasha of this week, with Korach. What was the sin of Korach? He wanted everything, hakol, and he lost everything. We are called to become a nation of priests. So what is a priest? The priest in Zohar the Kohen correspond to the right column. The Levites correspond to the left column that needs to serve the Kohen. The Levites are serving the Kohanim. Korah, who was a Levite, he didn't want, and he ended losing everything. He wanted a call, he received nothing. Iran wanted all that Israel have, they got nothing, and they lost a lot. So now we are waiting for the next events to unfold and hopefully the coming of Messiah. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Make a like to this video, share them, and come and visit our website for more Torah classes. Thank you very much. Shalom.